Bruchim aboim b'shem Hashem. What a great schus it is that throughout the entire world we are all united in the study of Pirkei Avos. I would like to thank Torah Anytime, an organization that is Omed Berumo Shalaylam, bringing Torah to the masses on virtually every continent, wherever Yidden are found. May they continue Mechayel Ochoyel Mitar Chachava. I would also like to thank Chazaq, an organization that has done wonders in bringing Klal Yisrael closer to Hashem through their many events, through their personal involvement in families, bringing children to yeshivas, girls to Beis Yaakov. They are doing the work of Mashiach Tzidkenu. May they continue Mechayel El Choyel Mitar Chachava. Our shir today is on Parak Aleph, and it is the 6th Mishnah. And I like to quote, Yoshua ben Prachya. Yoshua ben Prachya was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. He was the head of the Chachmei Yisrael in the times of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. We learn that when Yanai HaMelech began to pursue the Chachmei Yisrael, he wanted to kill them out. Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya escaped to Alexandria. There is a phenomenal incident that occurred. Not such a good incident for Klal Yisrael. But as you know, one of the Talmidim, one of the students, was Yoshka. And he went down together to Alexandria. When the note, when the symbol was available that it was time for Klal Yisrael to come back, and they started to travel back. So Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya and all the Talmidim, they were guests by a certain hostess. And there it was that Yoshka made a comment that was not appropriate for a Ben Torah. At that moment, Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya distanced himself from Yoshka, and everybody else did as well. Later, Yoshka tried to come back, but it was at that moment that Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya was in the middle of davening. So he went like this to Yoshka. He told him, wait. Yoshka thought he was being rebuffed. He tried to come another time. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Prachya said, wait. In other words, wait a moment till I'm finished davening. Yoshka mistook it. Unfortunately, he left, and from that day on, the rest is history. It is interesting because in this Mishnah, we learn that a person should judge everybody favorably. We can never tell when it is that judging someone unfavorably may have consequences that are catastrophic. Our Mishnah begins, Aseh lecha Rav. Everybody has to make for themselves a Rav. Everybody needs a Rabbi. An individual cannot be just an independent contractor in this world. Everyone needs a Rebbe, no matter who they are, no matter what they've accomplished, no matter what they're learning. They need somebody who they can turn to, someone that will give them das Torah, someone that will paskin their shaila, someone that will be able to be a guide for them, a leader for them, a light in the galus. Everybody needs it. Doesn't matter who they are. How many times people come to me and they don't have a Rebbe, they don't have a Rav, and they ask me a question, and the question is something Berumo Shalaylam that they have to know, and it would really be better if they had somebody that was involved with them, someone that knew them, that knew their history, that knew their ups and their downs. And inevitably, when I'll ask the question, by any chance, do you have a Rav, a Rebbe? No, I don't daven in one place or another place. I go to different shuls and I go around, and I haven't found my Rav. The guy's 50 years old and he tells me I still haven't found my Rav. And that is possible. But an individual has to try whatever they can to attach themselves to someone who understands, who has Torah, who knows halacha, that will be able to guide them. Toivim shnayim mino echad, 2 are better than 1. Don't do it yourselves. Having a Rav, having a Rebbitzin can sometimes save someone from things that I don't even want to talk about. Interesting. I had a call from a young man who told me he would like to come in to discuss his forthcoming chasna. B'chavod, please. And so the young man made an appointment and he came to me. He said, Rabbi, I know you only from your shiurim. I've attended some of your shiurim and I watch many on Torah Anytime. I would like to ask you, I don't have a Rav. Would you be Mesader Kiddushin for me and my Kala? I started to wonder. Here he's a young man. He doesn't have a Rebbe, he doesn't have a Rav. However, he was so sincere and he was so genuine that I decided I can only say yes to him. And I told him yes. Interesting. He had the information that I needed him to get in terms of the names of his Kala, the family, what to fill out in the Tanoim, in the Ksuba, and he didn't call me back. And the date of the Chasana was coming soon. And I wondered what was going on. I didn't have his telephone number. I didn't have his information. Finally, he calls me back. And he says, Rav, I want to ask you a question. What time will you be there? I said, Chassan, I don't even have your information. I don't even know what your names are, what the names of your Kala and her family are. He said, oh, I'm sorry. I'll get that to you right away. And he sent a shliach with all the information. Already, I wondered, why is it that he didn't get the information to me? I went to the wedding on the night of the Chasana. I come in, the Chassan greeted me, took me over to the table, to the Chassan's tish, and I sat next to him, a young man, a young Chassan from Israel. As I was sitting there, I saw that he got a little bit emotional. He said, Rav, there's something that I would like to ask you. Could we please go into the hall where it's private? I don't want to do it in front of everybody. I started to think to myself, I knew I should have asked more questions. I knew that I should have filled out a blank to make sure that everything was in order. Who knows what he's going to tell me? I go outside. He looks down and he says, Rav, I hate to tell you, my father is completely disassociated with me. He has nothing to do with me at all. He will not be at this wedding. I paid for the entire wedding. I worked very hard at a night job just to be able to pay for it. It would be my great honor if you would walk me down the aisle, because I have no one to march me down the aisle. And isn't a Rav supposed to be like a father? When I heard that, my heart was so moved. A genuine Chassan. He does everything himself. A wonderful Kala, a wonderful Chassan. And he's got to ask me, minutes before the chuppah, will I walk him down the aisle? I want to tell you, it is the only time that I ever wished that I wasn't a Rav. Because that night, when people would see me walk down the aisle with him, they would all realize that I'm a Rav, and he had to ask me to walk down with him. If I wasn't a Rav and I wasn't known, they would think it's his father. His father's walking him down. I took such great pride. I walked him down to the chuppah, and for some reason, everybody in the entire hall stood up and clapped. Mi yoidea, aseh lecha Rav. Sometimes you just got to get the Rav. Sometimes you got to get him last minute. But get a Rav. I stayed. Usually I would have left after the first dance. I can't stay at everyone's simcha. I try to stay as long as possible. But I would have left right after the first dance. And then I thought to myself, if you're the father If you're like the father and you walk them down the aisle, when does the father leave? Immediately after the chuppah? After the first dance, you duck out the side entrance? Or do you remain? So I stayed until the last Sheva Bracha that night. I said to the Chassan and Kala, I have to leave. Both the Chassan and Kala got up from their chairs and insisted on walking me out to the parking lot, to the place where my car was parked. In my life, at 120 Shana, I never got escorted to the parking lot, certainly not by the Chassan and Kala, the guests of honor. Aseh lecha Rav. Aseh lecha Rav means that a person has to try and make for themselves a Rebbe. And it's interesting because the great Malbim says, what does it mean, Aseh lecha Rav? Make for yourself a Rebbe, make it easy for him. Try to make it lucrative for him. Try to make it beautiful for him. Don't make it under difficult tanoim, difficult situation where it's hard for him. Make sure you have a Rav, you have a Rebbe. Make sure that they have what they need, because that is what the Malbim says is so important in life, that an individual knows the right way to be Moike Rabbanon, the right way to try and give honor and to make the idea of the Rav an idea that is choshev ma'od. So aseh lecha Rav, make for yourself a Rebbe. The second thing is, you have to be very careful, because sometimes an individual doesn't know the halacha. But if they paskin it themselves, so what happens is they could be wrong, chas v'shalom. Amid yaraisa, even a chiyuv kares, chas v'shalom, they could get it wrong, because they start with the svara. Logically, it could be like this, it could be like that. I have to tell you that somebody came into me one time, and they wanted to discuss a certain issue in their family. It was a shalom bayis. Wonderful. Sat down, and I spoke to them about the shalom bayis. When the individual was ready to get up and go out the door, on the way out the door, they happened to mention to me a certain living arrangement that this individual had. As they said it to me, I realized that they didn't know that what they were doing was in fact an Isser D'Oraisa. I said, could you come back for just a minute? I sat down and had an open discussion with the person. When the individual found out that it was an Isser D'Oraisa, they turned pale. Rebbe, I never meant to do it. How do I do tshuva for it? What should I do? And I understood that a person that doesn't have a Rav, that doesn't have whom to ask, unfortunately, could wind up doing Isurim that they don't want to do. Interesting incident happened by the great Reb Chaim of Brisk. Reb Chaim Brisker one time gets a knock on the door. Goin Olam, Rebbe Chaim Brisker, the Beis Halevi. And it was a maid that was in a Jewish home, a wealthy Jewish home, and she had a shaila chamura. She comes to the great Reb Chaim, it's before Shavuos, and she says, Rabbi, I have a very, very difficult question for you. Reb Chaim says, yes, please ask. She said, I know that the halacha is that you have to have cheesecake on Shavuos, cheese blintzes. He said, yes. She said, we have no cheese. There's no cheese to be bought. Reb Chaim said, 1 minute. He took a chair. He went up to the highest shelf. He pulled out a sefer. He began to look in it. Finally, he came down and said, you could use potatoes. In the blintzes, you could use potatoes. She was so happy. She went back with a psak from the Goin Reb Chaim Brisker, and everything was okay. A few months later, another knock on the door. Another shaila chamura. It's the maid. And the maid said, Rabbi, I have a question, and I know it's okay. I know it's not a problem at all. So I'm just coming to ask you, but I know it's okay. So he said, okay, ask. She said, that something happened in the kitchen with milchigs and fleishigs, basar v'chalav. When Reb Chaim heard that, he knew that the entire kitchen had to be kashered. Everything was not good. And he told her what had to be done and that he would speak to the people in the house in order to correct it. However, he asked her, just curious, if you didn't think that there was any question involved, you didn't have a shaila, why'd you come and ask me? She said, Rabbi, you know you were so nice to me when I came about that important cheese blend shaila that I felt I just wanted to come and ask you another question. Aseh lecha rav. A person has to know the importance of having a rav. Finally, uknei lecha chaver. Acquire for yourself a friend. Knei lecha chaver. It's extremely important. A good friend is important. How many times you tell the children, have good friends, have good friends. It's an important thing. It's hard to dictate friends and who will be friends and so forth. But a friend is extremely important. The koyach of two friends, says the Mezritcher Magid, is stronger than an individual could ever imagine. That's Gevura, two friends together. So it says, Knei lecha chaver. Now, a teacher, why does it say a teacher that Aseh lecha rav? So strictly speaking, in the Gemara Nedarim, Daf Lamed Zayin, a teacher cannot charge for Torah. A teacher can't charge for Torah. A person wants to give a shiur, unless they had to travel somewhere or it takes out time. Technically, an individual cannot charge for their Torah. Schar batala, they had to stop doing something else in order to teach or whatever it is, so they're allowed to get it, but technically, the Torah is bechinam. However, what happens a friend is somewhat different. A friend is so important. Even if I have to be koina a friend, I have to try to make an acquisition on my friend. I have to try to make it nice for them. I have to try to be moishech them. Even I have to pay a little bit of money. It is worth it because that is the importance in having a true friend. And as we know, Rabbi Chanina said, Harba lamadati miraboisai, I learned a lot from my rabbis. Umechaverai, and from my friends. Yoiser me rabboisai. I learned even more than my great tzaddikim, than my great rabbis. Umitalmidai, but from my students, Yoiser mikulan. Masechta Tainas Daf Zayin. In the Talmud it says, from my Talmidim, from my Talmidas, I learned more than anything. I was able to understand them. I was able to be challenged by their questions. I was able to interact with them. And with that, I learned even more how important it is that a person should know that they have a tzaddik, that they have a tzaddikes, that they have someone that they can look up to. And if that person is a friend, all the more so, how wonderful it is that a person realizes the value of friendship in this world. I want you to know that a person came to me and the individual was ready to marry a non-Jewish partner. Person came in, certainly no head covering. Individual came in dressed like they were ready to go to the beach. Doesn't matter. Every Yid is a Yid. Doesn't matter how they look. Doesn't matter what they think. Doesn't matter what they believe. They're my brother. They're my sister. So he comes in to this very room and he sits down. And he says, I came to talk with you. I am marrying someone, as he said, out of the faith. Rebbe, he said, Rebbe, please don't take this the wrong way. I didn't want to come. I said to him, so why'd you come? I'm thrilled that you're here, but why did you come? He says, well, you know, I have a friend. And I have a friend still from yeshiva days, believe it or not. I was once a yeshiva bacher. He told me a couple of other things. He said, you may not believe it, but I was. This friend stuck with me through thick and thin, never deserted me, no matter what I did, no matter who wouldn't answer my call anymore, no matter who didn't want to comment to me, No matter who, when I would see them on the street, would look ahead and pretend as though they didn't see me when I know they did. But this friend kept up with me. He kept the kesher. And when finally I worked up the courage, the oimetz, to tell him I was going to marry the girl who I'm going out with for a while, he said to me, you cannot do that. At least there's one thing that I ask you, and I never ask you anything. Go and speak it over with a rabbi. I told him, my mind is made up. It's a fait accompli. I really don't want to speak to anybody, and no one is going to change my mind. The friend said, listen, I'm your loyal friend. I will always be your loyal friend, no matter what you do, no matter what you go to, no matter how you change your life. I am there for you. But there's only one thing I ask. Please go and speak to a Rav. They debated back and forth. There were names that came up, back and forth and back and forth. Finally, the friend said my name. He said, I heard that name. In fact, I heard that name almost every day. How do you hear the name every day? Because we have in our house a minhag. The custom was when I was growing up that every single day in the morning there was a program, a radio program that came on, the Nachum Segal program. And that Nachum Segal program that had various people on, every day at 7:30 on the dot, Rabbi Dovid Goldwasser would give a Devar Torah. When I thought to myself, that guy who said that every single day, he didn't speak harshly, and he tried to say nice things and things that were sweet. In fact, I had a few good zichroinus, memories about listening. So I decided I would go to that guy, Goldwasser. And it is interesting. When he came in, I told him that not only does Nachum Segal have a constant connection to me, but ZK, who is world renowned today for his work in video and streaming and other things, has a weekly connection with me, and we are close. He was so happy to hear it. Why? I don't know. But Borei Olam, Hashem Yisbarach works in strange ways. Darkei Hashem are hidden from us. I began to speak to him. I was very moved. What a nice guy. What a guy that had a feeling for other Yidden. And I began to talk with him. And we were talking about everything except for his significant other. Finally, he said to me, Rabbi, I did come here for a reason. And I said to him, I know, let's get to it. And I began to speak to him. I was able to be poil because I want you to know, I began to cry in the middle of talking to him. When he saw that I got upset, he didn't like that because he thought he's upsetting me. I said, it's not you, it's the Inyan. When I see somebody like yourself, and I know what it would be for you to build a Jewish family, coming from those that went into the Holocaust, coming from those that their lives were snuffed out, coming from the families in Chorban Europa that suffered and killed off a significant portion of Klal Yisrael, that I know what every young couple will do, what every Jewish child will do, to try to fill the vacuum, to try to make up the numbers, to try to replenish what Klal Yisrael once was. Rebbe, what are you asking me? I said, I beg you for one thing. Whatever you're going to do in the future, I can't say, you know this person for a long time, but I'm asking you one thing. Don't confirm it. Don't make it a valid marriage. Do not come before a justice of the peace. Do not have a marriage certificate. Whatever is happening now is happening now. But don't solidify that relationship. Mi yodeya, who knows what's going to happen in the future? But we had talked about plans for a wedding, and I said, can I ask you a question? How old are you? He told me the age. I said, is this something that's been a childhood dream of yours, to have the marriage and to go to the justice of the peace? And everything? No, not really. So I said, so why you need it? Hold it off. Continue. A lot of couples in the world live like that. Just continue as you are. He agreed to me. The friend called me after he left. The friend couldn't thank me enough. I told him, are you kidding me? Do you know, I was the littlest pawn on the chessboard. I was so insignificant in all of this. Hashem had his parents listen to the Nachum Segal program, so it played every day. Hashem had him hear Goldwasser. You happen, just by chance, to suggest the name, and you think I did anything. Borei Olam, for some reason, works in mysterious ways. You're only able to see the hand of Hashgacha. Aseh lecha Rav. Make for yourself a Rav. Uknei lecha chaver. And make sure that you get for yourself a good friend. How important it is that we understand what it is when an individual has a good friend. The hashpah, the influence. Another thing, very interesting. I was on the train. It was Elul, the subway, New York subway. I don't suggest the New York subway, but I'm just telling you, Ma'aseh Shahaya, what happened. I go on, I have my Razil HaMalach, I have my Sefer Tzashmira, and I go on. Anyhow, a guy is watching me from across the aisle, and I see Ziyid, he's watching me. Comes over to me, says, Shalom Aleichem, he says, are you Rav Dovid Goldwasser? I said, yes. And what's your name? He tells me his name, Yerachmiel, something or other. And I said to him, it's a schus for me to meet you. He said, when I tell you the truth, now, during this time, I heard that it's very important that a person makes good friends. Because on the Yom Adin, on the day of judgment, sometimes, that even though the person themselves might not be Zoicha, if they make a good friend, and the friend would be upset if the other guy doesn't have a good judgment, if there's not a lot of brachos for that person for the year, so in that schus, the other person will get it. So I wanted to make your acquaintance. I wanted you should be my friend. I said, I want to be a very good friend to you. Please, keep the kesher, keep the connection, because I want to be a person who is a friend to an individual who cares about the Yemei Din. Kinei lecha chaver. We can never tell how important it is that a person should be a good friend. A friend will be a support. It will be someone that an individual can rely on throughout their entire life. I would like to just finish off by saying, Hevidanes kol adam lekav schus. A person should always judge everybody lekav schus. You got to judge them favorably. So it's extremely interesting because you take a look at it that even Moshe Rabbeinu, what happened when he took a look at Klal Yisrael, sometimes even Moshe Rabbeinu was doubting that Klal Yisrael could be zoicha to have a good din. The greatest in the generations, all of us have to be careful. When we see another Yid, always judge them favorably. Always give them the benefit of the doubt, because you can never really tell. I just will be Messiah B'Dover Tov. Priority one, It's a wonderful organization. They invited me to a convention, and I was to speak in the convention in the hotel, Motzei Shabbos, Saturday night. There was a guy, one of their chevra who was pretty much turned off the Yiddishkeit, wanted to speak to me. So I said, of course. We went into a room. There was a stage, there was a platform. And in order to be private, we went on top of the stage. The guy was like, I don't know how much taller than me he was, but he was a giant. He started to raise his voice. I got a little nervous. He started to speak very roughly about his tinus, about his arguments, his complaints, about Yiddishkeit, about this one, about that one. And I tell you the truth, I was waiting for them to call me so I can get out of there. And he continued on, he raised his voice. Sometimes I just said, please, could you be a little quieter? He continued. They came in. Rabbi Goldwasser, they're ready for you now. You're supposed to speak to the convention. So I told him, I wish we could continue this, but I got to go. He said, what, could I ask you one thing? I said, yeah, sure. He said, could I have a hug? Took a look at this guy, screaming and yelling and angry. I said, of course. So I hugged him. He put his head down on my shoulder and he began to cry. I thought to myself, Hevidanis kol adam lekav suchus. All that guy needed was a hug. All he needed was a little hiskarvus, a little varmkeit, a little warmth, until the Yiddish flam, the Pintele Yid, could be ignited within him. May it be ignited within each and every one of us.